Welcome back to another Film Geek video. Today, guys, I am talking about 5 slasher films that never received a sequel. They didn't go on to gain that massive franchise like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, or even Halloween. These are the films that did their one movie and maybe it just didn't capture the imagination of people at that time. Or maybe the film was crafted to just be a one-time type of film. Let's find out, shall we, as we explore 5 one-and-done slashers, starting with 2019's Brightburn. Brightburn comes to us from director David Yarovesky and is starring Emily Blunt, David Denman, and Jackson A. Dunn. This is a pretty unique slasher film, guys, because this is not just a slasher film, this is also a superhero origin story. Flippy floppy. It's a retelling of Superman if he wasn't the big blue Boy Scout and was more of a, well, let's just say, Jason Voorhees kind of a fella. So here we have a 12, 13-year-old kid with all of the powers of Superman, but the morality of someone like Freddy Krueger. What could go wrong, right? Well, this film delivers in a lot of great categories. The kills in this film are outstanding. There is a lot of just absolutely brutal kills in this film, and the characters are very well fleshed out, and the acting is absolutely superb in this film. The only problem I've ever had with this movie is it can get a little slow at the beginning, as we're getting the origin story told to us and so on and so forth, and things are starting to kind of be put together. The movie can kind of linger around a little too long in the origin part and not so much into the action. But let me tell you folks, when this film takes off, it is a no-hold bar. Real quick, before I continue with this video, I would like to say that during the recording of this video, there is some kind of construction going on in my neighborhood right now. There is a ton of grinding and drilling and shit like that. So if you're hearing some strange sounds in the background, that's just because, honestly, I'm not the world's greatest editor, okay? I'll try to get the sounds out, but I can't make any promises. Back to the video. Next up is a film that comes to us all the way from 1980, and it's actually from someone who's well known for ongoing large horror franchises. This is the film Shocker from writer-director Wes Craven. Shocker tells the story of a serial killer who's captured by police and while in custody makes a deal with the devil. So when he's shocked to death by the electric chair, he will become pure energy, which gives him the ability to jump from body to body. Now, this is an idea that has been used in a lot of horror films since, but this was kind of one of the first like it. So at the time, it was kind of original to have your slasher jumping around from body to body, amongst other things like being able to travel through television and electrical currents. The film is starring Mitch Pileggi and Peter Berg. Now, most people might know Mitch Pileggi from The X-Files. He was Agent Skinner, and Peter Berg is actually more known as a director and filmmaker from behind the camera than in front. In fact, I think this is one of his only leading roles. So anyways, Shocker, what do I like about this film? Well, the movie is almost like getting 2 movies in one. The film starts off as this really dark murder mystery type of slasher film with some dreamy elements and such because, hey, it's Wes Craven, so we need to throw in a dream sequence, right? Anyways, this goes on, and then the film switches into this goofy, campy thing once our killer gets, I guess you would say, shocked and allowed to go running around and jumping into bodies and such. The movie takes on a completely different tone and becomes a very campy and silly slasher film. So if you are not a fan of something that goes from being very dark and, suspenseful to something that becomes very silly and weird, this might be a good one from you. There's even an entire chase sequence in the film where the 2 main characters are jumping from TV show to TV show and even the nightly news. That's how silly and campy this film gets. It just goes into weird areas. Let me just say that right now. But it is a really fun movie to check out if you're a fan of Wes Craven. Maybe you're not familiar with this film. It's not one of his most popular movies. Let me put it to you that way. This is definitely an acquired taste. This is a love it or hate it kind of film. I like it for what it tried to be. And the thing I think happened with the last half, because literally the first half of this film is very dark, spooky, atmospheric, and then it just goes right into silly, campy slasher type of category right after that. And I think the reason why was this film had the toughest time getting just an R rating. Wes Craven kept sending this film off to the ratings people to get checked out. I want to say he sent it there at least 13 times before they could get a solid rating on this film. And after all the cuts and re-edits and changes and everything else, I think this is what we were left with. This movie was going to be an ongoing franchise. I mean, this was going to be his new nightmare type of film franchise. And unfortunately, after the rating system and the studio and all, actually, I don't think the studio had any involvement whatsoever, because that was part of the making of this film, was that Wes Craven wanted to be handed his own thing that would be 100% his, and no studio or anybody could tell him what to do. And this is what we got. And unfortunately, I think, again, the ratings screwed this film. It really goes into a completely different tone in the second half, and if that's something you can't enjoy and get behind, you're probably not going to find a lot out of Shocker. But if you want to see just an all-around fun, goofy, silly 80s horror slasher that you may not have heard of from a very famous and prolific director, this is the film for you. Our next film comes to us from writer and director team Scott Beck and Brian Woods, 2019's Haunt. Haunt tells the story of a group of friends who decide to go to one of those extreme haunted houses. You know, the ones where you have to sign a waiver, where then the actors can touch you and interact with you a lot more than your average haunted house. So that's what this group of friends think they are in store for, but no, guys, they've actually just signed up for one big kill room. Because every one of the bad guys in there, all the haunts, are actually slashers. Each and every one of them is part of a cult that is there to kill every single person that comes into their haunted house. This film is fun, and it is pretty dang scary. There's a lot of really good, well done kills in this film, also very well designed scares. This movie has a lot of cool stuff in it. It does a good job of solving the old problem of cell phones in modern slasher films. Putting it into one of these extreme haunted houses where you're already thinking that they're going to interact with you and everything was a brilliant idea. And also, one of the things I love about this film the most is that it is very Halloween themed, because everything takes place on Halloween, and I do absolutely love a Halloween horror story. I like maybe Christmas Story horror right after that, but a nice Halloween horror story, that's where it goes, man. That's what I like the most. This is just a really good, fun slasher film with some really great kills and all. Don't expect a lot of really well-developed and, well fleshed out characters in this film. All of our victims are just kind of cannon fodder. I don't know. I never find any of them very likable in this film. This is definitely one of those movies that rely mostly on scares and things of that sort. And in a lot of cases, you're rooting for the killers in this movie because, like I said, not the most likable characters. Not that they're awful people. You're just kind of like, oh, well, there goes social media queen. Bye. It's that kind of a kill. It's that kind of a slasher film. Yeah, so anyways, that is 2019's Haunt. All right, we're going back to the 1980s. In fact, we're going back to 1980 with Terror Train, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and directed by Roger Spottiswoode. This tells the story of a group of friends on New Year's Eve who decide to hop on a train and have a big New Year's Eve party. But little do they know that someone amongst them is pecking off friends one by one. Yep, this is a nerd revenge story. And not only is this a nerd revenge story, this has to be one of the worst jokes I have seen pulled on a person in a film. Period. It is dark and demented, and it makes you go, you know what? Maybe these people do deserve to be killed for that. That was gross. That was really bad. The characters in this film, much like Haunt, not very likable. You don't really care too awful much as they get pecked off one by one on a train. The train is kind of odd setting, to be perfectly honest, because it's like, who takes a train and parties New Year's Eve or whatever? That's really strange, but it does give a good atmosphere to this film. This movie does have a remake, I guess you could say. I think it was made specifically for Tubi. I'm not 100% on that because I've never seen it, but when I was doing a little bit of looking up of the films and all, I noticed that this one had a remake I wasn't even aware of, so I might check it out. I don't know if it does the same stuff. It did say that it takes place on a train, but I think it's for a birthday party or something. But anyways, I digress. I'm not here to talk about the remake. I'm here to talk about the 1980 Jamie Lee Curtis Terror Train. Now, in this one, the group of sorority and fraternity brothers and sisters hop on the train for New Year's Eve, and yes, there's a murder amongst them. And I forgot one part about this New Year's Eve party, and that is everyone's in costumes. Yep, it's a New Year's Eve party on a train, costume party. Woo! You know, people have those all the time, right? You know, it's just people hopping on a train in all their costumes and such going, hey, welcome to the new year. But what it does do is help give a lot of claustrophobia to this film and makes you feel very trapped and such. So it is a pretty good element to the movie. It's just kind of weird in my opinion. And then something else that this film does that I really enjoy is that our slasher, our killer, doesn't have a set look. Because of this being a costume party, each person he kills, he takes their costume, which is kind of a cool idea because then it allows him to infiltrate the group of friends even better because they think it's just their buddy who's in a costume dressed up like Groucho Marx or a lizard man. This is a solid film, especially if it's New Year's Eve and you're just sitting at home, maybe by yourself just enjoying a quiet night or having a fun movie party with friends. This is a good one to ring in the new year no matter what the year. That brings us to our final film, 1986's April Fool's Day, directed by Fred Walton and starring Deborah Foreman. It tells the story of a group of friends who go to visit their wealthy friend's summer home, and wouldn't you know it, a murderer shows up and starts pecking them off one by one. Sounds like a fairly typical whodunit slasher film, right? Well, wait till the ending of this one because it's got the good old Twist-a-Rooney. This is one of those films that has kind of divided horror fans, right? Because, yeah, the ending of the film is a nice little twist. It comes out of nowhere. Some people like it. Some people don't. I am in the school of liking it. Another thing, this film doesn't necessarily have a lot of like over-the-top, bloody, disgusting kills. It has a couple that are pretty good, but most of it is relied on the body reveals. There is one in particular in this that gave me the heebie-jeebies and pretty well jumped out of my skin the first time I saw it. This is a very fun 1980s horror comedy, and it is a solid, fun watch. Now, there is a remake of this film. I believe it came out in 2008. I don't know much about it, so make sure when you're looking for this one, you do look for the 86 version. I've heard, by the look of things, the 2008 version isn't that solid, so make sure you're looking for the right one. So there you have it, guys. There are 5 very solid one-and-done slasher films. So some of these may have been tailor-made to just be a one-time film, much like April Fool's Day, and others may have been something that were made to become an ongoing franchise that just didn't connect with the people at the time, and maybe there was some influences that caused that franchise to go kaput. But whatever it may be, these are 5 solid films that I suggest that you should check out if you're just curious. Well, alright guys, that's all I have for you today. Thanks again for checking out The Film Geek. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.